Hi, I'm Kristen Bell. Carvana makes car buying easy. Isn't that right, hun? Dax? Dax?
Sorry, did you know about this 7-day money-back guarantee?
A week to evaluate seat comfiness, you say?
A week of terrain tests? Yeah, I can test the brake pad resistance at variable speeds.
Make sure all the kids' stuff fits nicely.
Make sure our stuff fits nicely.
Oh,
Right. Still need to buy the car. Getting ahead of ourselves here.
Buy your car with Carvana today.
This is a great birth story of a successful VBAC, that's vaginal birth after cesarean. Welcome to the All About Pregnancy and Birth podcast. I'm Dr. Nicole Calloway Rankins, a board-certified OBGYN who's been in practice for nearly 15 years. I've had the privilege of helping over 1,000 babies into this world, and I'm here to help you be calm, confident, and empowered to have a beautiful pregnancy and birth. Quick note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Check out the full disclaimer at drnicolerankins.com/disclaimer. Now let's get to it. Hey, quick note before the episode. If you've been listening and thinking, okay, but how do I actually get ready for birth? I've got something coming for you. It's the Birth with Power Pathway, and it's my new updated online birth course launching this May. I'll walk you through a step-by-step plan to get you calm, confident, and empowered. Get on my email list at drnicolerankins.com/email so you don't miss it. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. This is episode number 137. Thank you so much for spending a bit of your time with me today. In today's episode, we have a birth story from Rosi. Rosi is a pediatric speech language pathologist from Durango, Colorado. She loves to be active and enjoys traveling. That is in non-COVID times anyway. Her hobbies are mountain biking, skiing, rafting, ultimate frisbee, and chasing around her 2 beautiful children. Rosi was induced at 41 weeks with her first baby, and after 30 hours of labor, she ended up having a cesarean birth. With her second pregnancy, she was adamant about waiting until 42 weeks before agreeing to be induced, and she scheduled an induction for 42 weeks in one day. She ultimately went into labor the night before her induction, went to the hospital around 4 a.m., and had her baby girl by 10 a.m. with no pain medication. There is a lot to learn from Rosi's birth story. She's going to share why her first birth was a bit traumatic for her. She's going to talk about all of the research and things that she did to learn about VBAC and be really informed for her second pregnancy, and how she advocated for herself to have a VBAC. And she's going to share a bit about how she actually wondered if she made the right decision about having a VBAC and waiting to be induced, because when her baby girl was born, she actually had to go to the NICU for a little bit. Now, this story is not typical in terms of VBAC or induction going to 42 weeks, but there's no reason or there's nothing about it where it couldn't be typical. Rosi just does a great job of really sharing about the importance of educating and advocating for yourself. You're going to learn a lot from this story for sure. Now, speaking of educating, of course, there's a lot of information out there about pregnancy and birth, and it can be hard to wade through it all. It's also hard to know if sources are reliable. Well, I have taken all of that stress and out of that process for you and created the birth preparation course. The birth preparation course is my signature online childbirth education class that gets you calm, confident, and empowered for a beautiful birth. The information in the course is research backed. It's based on evidence. I actually have a background in research. After I did my residency training, I did a 2-year research fellowship at UNC Chapel Hill, where I got a Master of Public Health and with a concentration in epidemiology. So I understand research and I understand studies, and that's the lens that I bring actually to all of my work. And then just to kind of bring it home, one of the comments from one of the course members, Lindsay, she said in the group about the course is that it is seriously the best thing. I read 3 books, countless message boards and mom blogs, and the only one that didn't leave me feeling more anxious was Dr. Rankin's class. So I want you to feel the same way too. So come join us inside the birth preparation course. It's also incredibly affordable for everything you get. Check out all the details at drnicolerankins.com/enroll. And I should also say that not only do you get the content, but you get the increased access to me, because right now, hearing me, you can't ask me questions and follow up about things, but you can inside the private course community for the Facebook group. You can also ask other mamas as well in a judgment-free and mom shaming free zone. Okay. So come join us inside the course, drnicolerankins.com/enroll. And let's get into this birth story episode with Rosi. So thank you so much, Rosi, for agreeing to come onto the podcast. I'm excited to have you share your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and your family?
I am a pediatric speech language pathologist. I've been married to my husband for 6 years, and we have 2 kids together. We live in a small town in Southwest Colorado, and we love to do pretty much everything outdoors, from mountain biking, rafting, hiking, skiing, and hope to be able to share that with our kids.
Nice. That sounds fun. I know it's beautiful out in that part of the country. I have not visited there yet, but it's certainly on my list.
Yeah, we love it. We live in the high desert and feel like it's activities to do year round.
Yeah, nice. All right. So we're mostly going to talk about your second birth, which was a successful VBAC. Yay for that. But I feel like in order to understand the VBAC, we also need to understand a bit about your first pregnancy and birth. So tell us a bit about what happened with your first birth, and specifically why you also mentioned that it was a bit traumatic for you.
Sure. So my first birth, the pregnancy was pretty unremarkable. At the 20-week growth scan, they noticed that I had marginal cord insertion, so that the cord wasn't inserted into the middle of the placenta, but instead it was off-centered.
Yep.
So the only thing that really changed about my pregnancy was that I had some increased growth scans. So I had some more ultrasounds.
Okay.
But growth seemed like it was right on track, so there weren't any real concerns about that. But, as I got closer to my due date, I was kind of anticipating going over. My mom and her sister both went 2 to 3 weeks over with all 3 of their kids. So
Gotcha.
I was thinking it would be wonderful if the baby came on time, but then I made it to 40 weeks, and I was being seen by a group of OBs that practiced out of our hospital. And so then they mentioned induction, and they wanted to induce pretty close to my 40-week due date because of the marginal cord insertion. My husband and I kind of pushed to see if we could get an extra week.
Right.
And they agreed to that, with some non-stress tests. And at that point, you're kind of just excited to meet your baby and, thought, well, all right, we'll go in for an induction. So we went in at 41 weeks.
Okay.
And it started off, I think, pretty standard with a Foley bulb and the Cytotec. And, around 11 a.m., the Foley bulb fell out and I was at 4 centimeters, and they broke my water and started Pitocin. And I remember the OB saying, you know what, you just look a little too comfortable. We're going to keep ramping up this Pitocin. And
okay.
kind of thinking that wasn't my experience. But,
right.
Those contractions did get pretty darn intense. I was planning to just have an unmedicated birth, but was flexible and thought, I've always been great at handling pain, and have done a lot of kind of longer hikes and bike rides. And, I thought a long labor wouldn't be that hard on me. But
right.
Then I think about 8 hours after they started Pitocin, I was still only at a 4 centimeters of dilation. And so I opted for the epidural, and that went great. And we eventually, the next morning, I'd made it to 10 centimeters dilated. And when I was pushing, the baby's heart rate just kept decelerating.
Okay.
And so eventually they said, like, we've been working at this induction for over a day now, and we just need to get the baby out. So it ended up being a cesarean.
Okay.
And when they brought him out, they mentioned, he was sunny side up, or like posterior. And so that's why they thought that maybe we weren't making progress while pushing. But kind of the whole experience. So, they took him out and I heard him cry, but I never got to see him. And right after the cesarean, I started to get chills and throw up. And I really didn't remember a lot for a couple of hours. And so I don't remember the recovery room or really meeting my son. And that kind of is the part that I think was really hard for me then when I thought back about kind of that experience. Like, first of all, they just kind of kept starting all these different interventions, and we tried to, stop at the beginning of each one and think, okay, ask about what are the benefits, what are the risks, what are the alternatives, what if we did nothing? But we just kind of kept ramping things up, and it felt like just kind of the whole experience got out of control and things were just happening to my body, and I really wasn't a participant of it.
Yeah. Do you feel like they explained things to you, or it just kept like going without you like feeling involved in the decision-making process?
The OB that I had would explain things, but I felt like it was just kind of like, we're going with her plan. Like, I didn't really have a lot of, like, I could ask questions about it, but like, this is what we're going to do.
Got it. Okay. So then after the delivery and you kind of thought back about things, did you have to do anything to process that experience for you?
I didn't really process it until I think I was pregnant again.
Okay.
Kind of afterwards, I think I was disappointed by how everything went, but everyone kind of is like, oh, well, you're healthy and your baby's healthy. So what is there to complain about? But kind of looking back on it, like it felt like the process of delivery also matters. And I think probably OBs, they see birth every day, but to like a mom, that this is one of the most important experiences,
Yeah, I totally get that. And I can see how, especially, well, first off, I hate it when people say that, like, to just be happy with a healthy baby. It's very dismissive. Like, there's opportunity, you can be happy that you and your baby are alive and not be satisfied with the experience, however the experience went. So that always drives me crazy. And this is an important point that like you said, like there's more to the experience. And sometimes we have to step back and say that, like, even though things were fairly straightforwardish, that, and we do this a lot, you don't. So that's, certainly really eye-opening for me. Let's talk about something most pregnant women aren't getting enough of: omega-3 DHA. The recommendation is over 200 milligrams a day, but less than 5% of pregnant women in the US meet that. That's one of the reasons I love Ritual's Essential Prenatal. It has 350 milligrams of vegan DHA, plus other key nutrients like methylated folate and choline to support baby's neural tube development. As an OBGYN, I appreciate that Ritual goes beyond the basics. The formula is science-backed, third-party tested for heavy metals and microbes, and every ingredient is traceable. And the delayed release design, it's gentle on the stomach, something that really matters, especially if there's trouble with nausea during pregnancy. You deserve to know exactly what you're putting into your body, especially when it comes to prenatal multivitamins. And with Ritual's dedication to traceable science and sourcing, you always will. See for yourself with 25% off your first month at ritual.com/Dr. Nicole. Start Ritual or add Essential Prenatal to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/Dr. Nicole for 25% off your first month. So then you go into the next pregnancy. And did you go back to the same group that you had before?
I did. Yeah. I think that more than anything, I mean, we were hoping to have 2 kids, close together, and didn't really expect it to happen because we had some challenges with getting pregnant with our first. And so at 11 months postpartum, we found out that we were pregnant again. I'd kind of describe us as surprised as 2 people can be to be pregnant that are having unprotected sex.
That always cracks me up, especially when people have fertility issues and then they're like, wait, did you say I was pregnant? Like, yeah. I didn't think that was going to happen so easily. So it sounds like it happened sooner than you thought, or sooner than you were thinking it was going to happen.
Yeah. So I was 11 months postpartum. I was totally surprised, but we were thrilled. And then I guess I didn't think that much about it. I just called the group of OBs. We live in a small town, and so you kind of have 2 options. You can either go with the group of midwives or the group of OBs, but they both practice out of the hospital. And I figured I'd met most of the OBs already. So I just assumed that I would just go there again.
Got it. So when did you decide that you wanted to have a VBAC?
Yeah, I decided that I wanted to have a VBAC around 20 weeks when I really started to think about delivering this baby and kind of what I wanted for the next delivery. I knew that I was hoping that I wouldn't need to be induced again. And I knew that I just wanted something different, that I wanted to feel more educated, more a part of the process. And I had a cousin that had a cesarean and then went on to have vaginal births. And so I never really thought that once you had a cesarean, you would always have a cesarean.
Right. So you decided around 20 weeks, like, I'm going to go for this VBAC. And I'm curious, you said you wanted to be more educated and involved the second time. Did you do any childbirth education with your first birth?
We took the hospital, childbirth education course. And then I think I read some of what to expect when you're expecting and kind of just called it a day and figured I'm young and healthy and strong and, everything's going to go great.
Gotcha. So a lot of it was a surprise when things didn't go exactly as you anticipated the first time.
Yeah.
And you wanted to do the best you could to prevent that from happening the second time.
Yes. Yeah. I figured no matter if it ended in a cesarean or a vaginal birth, I knew that I was going to feel better about my next birth just because I was going to put in more research and just be kind of a more educated patient.
Gotcha. That was my question. I was going to ask, were you going into it like, I know that different possible things can happen, or were you going into it like, I have to have this specific outcome? But it sounds like you were like, I know the different possibilities can happen, but I'm going to take control of all of the things that I can control.
Yeah, I would say that the latter. And I figured, if I had a cesarean birth, again, I had discussed with the OBs too about how my preferences of how I really wanted to be able to, at least see the baby, if I could hold the baby in the OR and start skin to skin, and they were a little bit, I couldn't really nail them down on that issue if I would be able to hold the baby in the OR, but they said they would try. I was like, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
And this is pretty recent. Like, this isn't that long ago.
No. So this is June of 2021.
And they were giving you pushback about, or not even firmly committing to being able to see the baby as soon as possible and hold the baby in the OR?
Yes, at least in the OR. They said they changed their policies from when I delivered my first in October of 2019, that now the mom doesn't go into a separate recovery room, but goes right back into the room with your labor and delivery room with your baby. But they said that it had to do with staffing, if they could have an additional nurse that would be there to help facilitate that skin to skin.
Okay, interesting. Okay. I mean, it just shows you that hospitals are at different places in terms of, and you did the best you can. It's I hear it and it's frustrating because what more could you have done other than ask in advance, So how did you otherwise feel like you're pregnant? How did your pregnancy go and how was your prenatal care?
My pregnancy was pretty straightforward, pretty similar to my first. I feel like I have fairly easy pregnancies. I just kind of feel more tired than usual the whole time. Yeah, I feel like I'm always growing a human and could take a nap every day.
And then did COVID change anything about your prenatal care?
I would say my husband was not able to come to any of the appointments with me except for the 20-week growth scan, but that was fine with me because he came to a lot of the ones during the first pregnancy, and I felt comfortable going and advocating for myself.
Yeah, I think for at least for me, I'm speaking for myself. For the second one, I was like, I'm fine. My husband did come for the first one, but the second one, it was like, we'll be fine. So I can totally see that.
Yeah.
So once you decided that you wanted to have a VBAC, when did you communicate that with your doctors, and how supportive were they?
So they said at the 28-week appointment, we'd talk about my birth plan. And so I had done a lot of research about looking into the risks of both a VBAC and a repeat cesarean, and had a lot of questions about induction of a VBAC, since I know that can vary depending on where you deliver and who you deliver with.
Yep. And I'm sorry, if you don't mind me asking, what were some sources of your information?
So I looked at ACOG, and then I was listening to a podcast called the VBAC Link, and then I looked at the evidence-based birth.
Yeah, all great resources. So I actually had the folks who do the VBAC Link podcast on my podcast sometime last year. Yeah. So it's not like you went to like reliable sources of information. And then your questions are just spot on, like what happens with induction and all of those things. So what was that conversation like with them?
So the OB that I met with at the 28-week appointment, was supportive, and I felt like she answered all the questions, but everyone was kind of a little bit dismissive about, oh, well, we probably won't need to induce. Second babies come earlier. There's no way we're going to get there. And I was like, no, but I want to know if
what's up? Like, tell me. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they would have induced with Pitocin, and a Foley bulb. And I did say that I really wanted to, like, as long as the baby and I were healthy, that I wanted to wait to 42 weeks to induce. And the first doctor was, yeah, okay, no problem. And then I pretty much at every OB appointment, I would just double check. I tried to meet with all the different OBs, and I went over the preferences of, okay, like, I want to have VBAC. I don't want to be induced until 42 weeks, and we kind of went through the whole rigmarole, and I got different feelings from different doctors. Some doctors were like, yes, of course, like, this is going to be great. And other doctors were like, well, it didn't work for you the first time. So, I don't think you have that great of odds of doing it, but it's your choice. And I was like, okay, well. Oh my gosh. Thanks for your support.
Right. How did that make you feel?
I was pretty certain that I wanted to try it. And I looked at, the stats, and most people that go for a TOLAC are successful.
Yeah.
And, I felt like my son wasn't in a great position, and that was probably why we weren't able to push him out, and that my body just wasn't ready. But I thought if I waited a little bit longer, and, I was trying to I was doing some chiropractic care, and I was doing, yoga, and I was on the Spinning Babies website and doing some of those exercises. And I was just really aware about, not trying to be too much in a reclined position, doing belly mapping. So I felt like I was trying everything to be successful that I could, and that I just kind of thought that it was going to work.
Right. But I guess and also I'm asking, like, there's a degree of uncertainty, because did you know who was going to be there for the birth? And
no.
So how did all that uncertainty make you feel?
Yeah, that was a little bit tough. And I did call, like, starting at 40 weeks, you can call and see who's going to be the delivering doctor each day of the week.
Right.
But my plan was just to try to labor at home as long as possible. We hired a doula for the second birth as well. And so And she was really supportive, and my husband was really supportive. And so our plan was just to labor at home and then to kind of have them to be the buffers if I was with a doctor that wasn't as supportive.
Gotcha. I mean, did it feel did you feel like you had to work really hard with all of the preparation and planning for things?
I feel like I took a pretty deep dive, like into birth, and tried to do all the educating that I could, just so that, I would feel like no matter what happened, I did everything that I could to have a safe, healthy VBAC.
Got it.
So yeah, and I felt so, I read An Amazed Guide to Childbirth and some other books. And I felt excited about what my body could do. And I felt like I just really tried to stay in a good headspace. And, during that birth, I did do some processing of my previous birth and tried to do a fear release where I wrote down all my fears and burned them. And I took a video of kind of talking about what happened in my first birth. And once I did that, I kind of felt like it was off my chest and just kind of in the ether. And
Gotcha. Again, just controlling the things that you could control. Yeah. So, okay. So you're getting, to your due date. What was the discussion about regarding induction? Because there's one thing when you're 30 weeks or 35 weeks. It's a different one when you're 40 or even 41 weeks. So what did that look like?
Yeah, so that is actually very true. At my, 41 week appointment, then they're like, well, we should probably induce, soon. And the doctor, told me they had the first time around that the rate of stillbirth doubles from 41 to 42 weeks. And they wanted to induce me soon. And I even asked her, I was like, well, what does it double from and to? Because I had looked up some stats and I just wanted to know if, what I found was the same. And she didn't know, which I was kind of surprised about because it's like, well, if you're telling people it doubles, it matters if it doubles from 5 to 10%. Or I was like, because when I looked it up, I thought it doubled from 0.01 to 0.02%.
Yeah.
And I figured with a family history of going late that it was just kind of how my body worked.
Right.
So, and I went in for a non-stress test at my 41 week appointment, and they measured my fluid levels, and that all looked great. And then I went in for a non-stress test that following weekend, and my due date fell on a weekend, and they don't induce on a weekend. So we scheduled it for Monday morning when I'd be 42 weeks and 1 day. And, kind of having everyone say maybe you should get induced and you shouldn't go so long, it kind of gets in your head. So I definitely was very aware of the movement and trying to do, kick counts and just wanting to make sure that something didn't happen, at the end. And
right.
But they didn't have any openings for inductions on the Friday or Thursday before the weekend. So well, I guess we just have to wait till Monday. And I was like, oh, drat. But it was with my favorite OB was on Monday too. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be bummed about being induced, but at least it's with my favorite doctor. So
Gotcha. And it's always interesting to me that it's okay, you need to be induced, but wait, never mind. We don't do it on the weekend.
Yeah.
Or there's no space on Fridays. So, we'll just move it to Monday. So it's conflicting messages about the importance of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were some things that you wanted for your birth?
I guess when I envisioned my birth, I really wanted to just have that immediate skin to skin, just get that ooey gooey baby and just, snuggle him up. And I really wanted to see what natural labor felt like. I felt like getting induced last time. I didn't really know what it would feel like to have contractions that weren't, brought on by medicine. And and then we were hoping for delayed cord clamping and just, being able to have that golden hour. And after that, I was just, kind of hoping that hoping for the best, it's like, well, we'll make decisions as they come and we'll see.
Gotcha. Okay. So, I know you said you were thinking about like, well, when you say people, was it mostly the doctors who were like, you should do induction, or were any of your family members or friends like, you should just go ahead and get induced?
I think it was mostly the doctors. My family was supportive, and friends. I mean, everyone, like when you're that pregnant, everyone has a suggestion for how to induce labor. And so I heard a lot of those and I was like, you know what? Evidence-Based Birth has a whole natural labor induction series. I've been all over that website, listened to all those podcasts. So I was like, we are trying everything, but yeah, I'll try eating spicy foods and going on a, full moon walk.
Right. And did you end up trying most of those things?
Yes. So yeah, after 40 weeks, I was doing acupuncture. I was seeing a chiropractor from about 35 weeks on. I was doing the spinning babies. I was using the breast pump, sex, prenatal yoga, curb walking, practicing. Like I did a lot of hypnobirthing. I was eating dates from about 37 weeks on. That's just to, I guess, have a faster labor. But
Lord, Rosie.
Yeah. So I felt like I was
you did everything. Like,
yes,
you did everything for real. I think that, and then did you finally end up trying castor oil also?
I did. Yeah. So on my 42nd week, it was the day before the scheduled induction. I figured, well, I might as well, try castor oil.
Mm-hmm.
I had looked at the evidence on the website and I had my husband listen to the podcast, just to make sure that he felt, comfortable with that as well. And really all the recent studies don't show like an incidence of increased meconium. So we felt like we might as well give it one last ditch effort. And I tried that Sunday morning. We kind of just hung close to the house because it is a laxative. But I didn't have any GI effects at all. So I kind of just figured it didn't work. But then that night I did start to feel some contractions and they just felt so different from the ones with my son that I even like Googled. I was like, what does a contraction feel like?
Right.
Like, oh, good. Like tightening in my lower abdomen. Like this is what I'm feeling. So yeah, it was, I don't know if there's been anyone that's been more excited to like feel contractions than I was.
And it's hard to say if the castor oil actually even did anything or if you just went into labor. I mean, you said your family members went into labor late also, so who knows? So then was that actually the start of labor?
Yes. Yeah. So it started off pretty mild. It was exciting. And so it started probably about 7 or 8 at night that I started to feel some tightening. And I just figured I'd try to go to bed and get some rest. I talked with my doula and she suggested using the breast pump. And I said, you know what, like I want to get some rest, but like I'll wake up soon anyways for a pee break. So I'll do it then. But I really wasn't able to fall asleep because the contractions just kind of started picking up and they weren't painful at first, but coming about every 4 to 5 minutes for about 45 seconds. Then around 11 or so at night, I got up because I just wanted to move around and make some noise and let my husband sleep. And then just kind of progressed. I eventually got in the bathtub. I was just listening to my hypnobirthing tracks and just really excited about the whole process.
Right.
And around 1, I probably woke up my husband, was like, all right, you should pack this car because things are starting to pick up in intensity. And I want like the car to be ready and then for you to be able to help support me.
Right.
And he kind of was like, oh, we got to call our doula. And I was like, no, I'm fine. Don't tell her to come. But he called her. And so she was just kind of awake and ready. And then about 2:30, my water broke. And then my doula did come over. She told us that she wanted to come over then. And after my water broke, I kind of had a hard time feeling the fetal movement. And so I was just a little bit more nervous about just wanting to make sure that baby was okay in there. So we left for the hospital maybe around 4:30.
Okay.
Got checked in and they checked me and I was already 6 centimeters dilated. So I thought that was great.
Yeah.
And then around 7 a.m, the doctor was in there and I was just like, okay, what is the scoop with the anesthesiologist? Because last time it took hours for that guy to show up. And and I just want to know, like, is he, like, where is he? And, like, if it's going to be a 30-hour ordeal like last time, like, I want to talk to the anesthesiologist. And so at that point, they checked me again, which I was a little bit reluctant about since my water broke. I just didn't want to have too many cervical checks, but they said that I was already 10 centimeters dilated. And so, I said, no need to see the anesthesiologist. We'll just wait until I was ready to push. Because they said the baby was still up pretty high, like at a -1 station, I believe.
So you went from 6 centimeters to completely dilated in an hour-ish?
I think about 2 hours.
2 hours, okay.
At about 5 a.m., I was checked when we got into the hospital at 6 centimeters. And then at 7, I was fully dilated. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so I labored down. I met with the OB at 8 when she came on. I was like, well, I guess I'm here for the induction. She said kind of jokingly, and she was like, you know what, just listen to your body, and whenever you're ready to push, we'll be here and we'll push. And yeah, I don't think I'm the best at listening to my body. Like, I couldn't tell if I should, try to just relax through the contractions or if I should be pushing because it was, there was pressure, and just didn't quite know. And then eventually around 9, she's like, you know what? I think we're ready. Like, let's start pushing. And, so we tried some different positions. I didn't think that I'd want to push on my back, but the OB thought that that's where I was making the most progress, or that's where she could see that I was making the most progress. And I was like, okay, you know what? If we're making progress, this feels good. We'll go with that. Gotcha.
And so what were you doing to manage contractions during the 2 hours while you were waiting?
So we were doing hip squeezes. I was just trying to, relax as much as possible through them and just kind of swaying and moving through them. I always kind of felt like, it was intense, but I could do another one. Like, I was kind of at that point where I was like, okay, well, that was hard during that contraction, but I could handle another one. And I knew that it wasn't gonna, last that much longer since I was fully dilated. And
gotcha.
I was kind of hoping that by waiting, the baby would just keep descending. I had this idea that I would just breathe the baby out, or that there'd be the fetal ejection reflex. But I don't know. For me, I felt like I had to actively push to help get my baby out. But actually during pushing, I was surprised. I felt like no pain at all the whole time. Like, to the point that I was like, is that a contraction? Should I be pushing? And they'd be like, yeah, push now. Like,
really?
Okay. So I don't know. Something turned off once I started pushing, and I felt no pain until like, I think the baby's head was maybe like halfway out. And then I was like, oh, this must be what the Ring of Fire is like, and there's definitely some stinging, but yeah.
And you hadn't used anything for pain, no pain medication or anything?
No pain medication. I felt like with my first, it was just kind of a really out of control experience. And I felt like if I didn't use any pain medication, then I'd just kind of be more in control. But yeah, so we didn't have any pain medication.
Wow. And then this time it sounds like things just didn't feel nearly as intense as it did with the induction.
Yeah. And I don't know if that was the Pitocin or if it was because my son was like posterior. And so I was probably having back labor, but didn't know it. And with the Pitocin contractions, like with my first birth, they were just coming on top of each other. So I'd have like 3 or 4 contractions in a row, and then I'd have like a 5-minute break. And it just kind of, I wasn't certain when things were going to ease up. Right. And then his heart rate kept decelerating, and that was stressing the doctors out and me out. And then I felt like I wasn't able to handle the pain. And I think that this time I also had, was practicing hypnobirthing, and I think that probably helped, or just my breathing, and I don't know.
Gotcha.
It was just a very, very different experience.
It sounds like it. I mean, would you describe it as like calm?
I'm trying to think if it would be calm, because I definitely had to don't know about strain to push, but I was like definitely trying to push the baby out, but
Gotcha.
it was, I don't know, it was probably my favorite part of the delivery.
Right.
Was the pushing.
And how long did you push?
A little bit over an hour.
Okay. And that's not bad at all. That's not bad at all. So, I forgot to ask, did anyone try to encourage you to get an epidural because you had a prior C-section before?
No, one of the OBs did mention that it might be their preference, but that it was up to me.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because a lot of times folks want to try to say you have to have an epidural because, the risk of a repeat C-section and things like that. So that's good. Okay. So you pushed for a little over an hour, you said, and you were having no pain during the contraction. Some people are going to be listening to this like, oh my gosh, where do I sign up for that? So then as you're in, I can't remember, sorry, he or she came out?
She, yeah. So she just like shot out, but I didn't realize she had a really tight nuchal cord. And so the OB like cut that, I think actually like before that she was all the way out. And so then they brought her up to my chest for maybe 5 seconds, but she was having trouble, they said, pinking up. And so they brought her and just put her under some oxygen immediately. And then she had to go to the NICU for about 45 minutes or so, which was, tough because then immediately I was kind of doubting if I made the right choice of trying for a VBAC as opposed to a repeat cesarean. But the nursing staff was all really calm about it. They said, her blood pressure's great, her heart rate's great, her oxygen sat levels seem good. But they said that she was just a little bit floppy and having trouble pinking up. So they did bring her to the NICU, and then they brought her back, and in all the observations, they said that she was doing great. But that was a bummer, because I was like, okay, like I'm going to get to hold this just like gooey baby and just hold her on my chest.
Right.
But, they brought her back in, and she latched right away and was able to nurse, and she was just alert for hours. And oh man, she has just been so sweet and good tempered and just, yeah. So
that's wonderful. So yeah, I guess did you have flashbacks, for lack of a better word, to the first time when you also didn't get to see your baby like right away?
A little bit. Yeah. It was definitely tough to see them wheel her away.
Eventually, I mean, I'm glad she came back quickly, but I can imagine how that thought was running through your mind that maybe you made the wrong decision. So I'm glad you didn't have to wrestle with that for too long.
Yeah. And I had thought about what I would do if it wasn't a smooth VBAC, because when I was deciding between a VBAC or a repeat cesarean, to me, it seemed like if you had a smooth VBAC, it would be easier and better for me and for the baby. But, if something went wrong, then, what would I do? And I had told myself that I wasn't going to blame myself, that I had done the research and I felt comfortable and confident. And, the risk that a lot of people bring up with a VBAC is uterine rupture. And I looked at the research on that, and, the risk of having uterine rupture is still incredibly rare. And if it were to happen, it can be, anywhere from really minor to, it could be catastrophic for the baby. But since I was delivering in a hospital and I felt comfortable with the OBs that they were going to be on the lookout for any uterine rupture, that if that did happen, that they would get that baby out quickly.
Gotcha. I mean, you really weighed everything. Like everything, and made a really informed decision for sure. But I guess I'm sort of like, also though, it wasn't necessarily because you were given that information. You had to find that information yourself. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, the OBs were just busy, they see you for an appointment and then you're kind of in and out. And so, I felt kind of like the onus was on me to do the research and bring up, what I wanted. And the OBs did say, like, due to your first birth, you could be a VBAC candidate. So,
Gotcha.
They just kind of mentioned that, but then I was the one that then kind of dug deep and wanted to do all the research and see.
Yeah. So did you have to have any stitches or anything after your birth?
No.
Oh, good.
I was really pleasantly surprised by that, especially since I think sometimes pushing on your back, you can have a higher chance of tearing, but yeah, I didn't have any tearing that needed stitches. I was sore, but I think that's expected.
Right. So then what was the postpartum period like for you?
I feel incredibly lucky because my husband had 4 weeks of paid paternity leave. So he was there for 4 weeks and would take our toddler to do activities, and I could just nap and nurse. And she has just been really easy. She's been a phenomenal sleeper. And I don't know if it was the manner of delivery or if I'm just the second baby or I don't know what, but I just kind of felt this like immediate connection to her versus with my son. I felt like it was kind of forming and we built it over time.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I felt like there was a different connection kind of immediately post birth. And I don't know if that was because it was a VBAC versus cesarean or
gotcha
or what, but yeah, I feel like I've had a fairly easygoing postpartum.
Well, that's good. Both physically and mentally.
Yes. Yeah.
I can imagine. I'm sure the recovery physically, I hear people say a lot. I don't know personally that an unmedicated birth, you're up and moving fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Afterwards and feeling more like yourself fairly quickly.
Yeah, I would say that for sure. And I was really hoping to avoid the cesarean because having a toddler at home who still loves to be picked up, you're not supposed to pick up anything more than 10 pounds.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, my girls are 2 years apart exactly. And I was like, this is just, it's not going to happen. So, yeah. So is there anything that you weren't happy about with your experience?
It would have been wonderful if she didn't need to go to the NICU, but that was the only thing that, if I could have changed anything, but I knew that birth was unpredictable and that, anything could happen.
Right.
And so I kind of felt like,
overall that things went very well.
Yeah. I'd say at least with the labor, everything went really well. And then the postpartum, everything went really well. It was just that short period after birth that was a little bit stressful. And
Gotcha. So then as we wrap up, what would be one thing or your one favorite piece of advice that you would tell to someone who's thinking about a VBAC?
It's hard to think of just one. I feel like it's a mixture of like staying positive and having positive people around you and also just educating yourself. Sometimes I think there's some misinformation or people say, things like, what if you have a rupture and your baby dies, but really if you understand the statistics and, the odds behind that, then it makes it a lot less scary.
Yeah, for sure. Where can women connect with you? And you can totally say no if you don't want to.
Yeah, I have just a private Facebook and Instagram account, but if anyone has any questions or wants to talk, I'd happily answer them. On Facebook, it's Rosi Philippi, and on Instagram, it's Rosana Hosanna.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come onto the podcast and sharing your story. So many useful pieces of information here. I know folks are going to find it useful.
Good. I hope so.
All right. Wasn't that a great episode? I'm so glad that everything ended up going well. And she had that beautiful, unmedicated VBAC birth and got to meet her beautiful baby and things went better the second time around. Now, after I have a guest on, I do something called Nicole's Notes, where I talk about my top 3 or 4 takeaways from the conversation. And here are my Nicole's Notes from my conversation with Rosi. Number 1, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again because we have to repeat it every so often. Stop saying just be happy to have a healthy baby. You can be happy or be grateful that you are healthy and that your baby's healthy, but still be upset about your experience. Okay. You don't have to dismiss if you're unhappy with the way your birth experience unfolds. That doesn't mean that you're not grateful about having a healthy baby and about you being healthy. Okay. Your experience is your experience. And that means that even if other people think it's fine, it may not be fine for you. Okay. And that is okay. Honestly, when I listened to Rosi's story, getting up to the C-section, it sounded pretty straightforward and typical in terms of what could happen in terms of how an induction unfolds and if the baby's in a certain position and pushing for 3 hours and then heading for cesarean. Now, the part afterwards where she didn't get to see her baby for a while and didn't feel connected, that part didn't seem right. But really leading up to it, nothing stood out to me as red flags, but it doesn't matter what I think. Rosi felt that experience was not good for her. And so she made some steps and did some things to change that the second time around. Okay. Number 2, Rosi made a point that her doctor didn't know like specific numbers about stillbirth. And that is not uncommon. Actually, the doctors don't know specific numbers off the top of our head. To be honest, it's not something that we necessarily carry around as part of our regular information. I think what would have been appropriate, and it's something that I do, is say, you know what, I don't know that exact number off the top of my head, but let me look that information up and get back to you. We walk around with personal computers in our pockets, and we can certainly access those types of information or that type of information relatively quickly. I think sometimes there's some stigma or hesitation about feeling like or appearing that you don't know something. And so it's uncomfortable to say, I don't know, but it's not uncomfortable that or not unusual, I should say, that we don't necessarily know the stats. Like I don't know the stats for stillbirth, like right off the top of my head. I know it's a low number, like less than 1%, but I don't know those exact numbers. So give yourself or give your doctor some grace in that regard, and do feel comfortable saying, well, would you mind looking it up and getting back to me to follow up the conversation? I do appreciate, though, that Rosi was insistent with getting answers to her questions, not just about stillbirth, but in general. So you may need to be insistent in order to get those answers. But as far as numbers go, we may not know those exact numbers like right off the top of our head. Okay, number 3 is control what you can. So much of what Rosi described was uncomfortable about her first birth was that she felt like she was out of control, like things were happening to her in her body that were out of her control. And the truth is that birth is an unpredictable process. And there are many elements that are out of our control, that are out of your control, that are out of your doctor's control. And when people are unhappy with their birth experience, sometimes it's because they don't realize that is a possibility, that things may not go exactly as they intend, and they're not prepared for that. And it sounds like, or it was the case, that the second time around, Rosi took a different approach where she's like, I'm going to do all of the things that I can. And if things don't go a certain way, then I know that at least I did everything that I can. Okay. And she had a much more open mind to the process and how things could unfold. And I think that made a difference in things being successful for her. That's not based on science, of course. That's just my opinion. But being open to the possibilities and the unpredictability of labor is really important in order to ultimately be satisfied with your experience. Because it's not that people aren't happy that they didn't have a vaginal birth or they had a cesarean birth. Usually when people aren't happy, it's because things didn't go the way they expect and they weren't prepared for that possibility. Now, I'll mention again that, of course, being prepared or part of being prepared is childbirth education. So do check out the birth preparation course, my online childbirth education class. It's wonderful. And I just love being able to serve folks in a more intimate way and connect and provide that evidence-based information to help you get ready for your birth. You can check out the course at drnicolerankins.com/enroll. Okay. And the last thing I'll say, I feel like I'm being a little bit chatty today, but the last thing I'm going to say is that You have to be comfortable with your choices and accept the possibility of all outcomes, whether good or bad. And this one is tricky, okay? Because you don't want to like give energy to negative possibilities happening, but you have to be aware and accept the fact that there are these small chances that bad outcomes can happen. Sadly, bad outcomes do happen. Rarely in obstetrics. It's not something that's common, but it is a possibility. And Rosi had obviously done her research and she had accepted those possibilities. She knew that stillbirth was a possibility. She knew that uterine rupture was a possibility and that it could be bad. But she felt comfortable with the numbers and the team and the support that she had in order to manage that. So you have to not put blinders on. You have to be comfortable with all of those possibilities happening. This is one of the things that happens in obstetrics, at least from our side as providers, that kind of terrifies us in a sense that when there's a bad outcome, often people want to place blame. And that can end up in lawsuits. And sometimes there is blame to be had in the way care was managed or the way care was given, that kind of thing. But sometimes the reality is that bad outcomes happen and there's nothing that could have been done to make that bad outcome not happen. And you just have to be comfortable with that possibility. That's the possibility of life, really. And birth is no different than that. All right. So there you have it. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to me right now. And if you feel so inclined, I'd love it if you leave an honest review in Apple Podcast in particular. Also, do connect with me on Instagram. That's another way for us to connect outside of the show. I'm on Instagram at Dr. Nicole Rankins. There I share information, helpful tips about pregnancy and birth, short stuff that you can read. I do reels even, something that I never thought that I would do. Of course, I do them in a way that works for me. There's no pointing or dancing involved, but I do nice, fun reels sometimes. So do check me out on Instagram at Dr. Nicole Rankins. So that's it for this episode. Do come on back next week. And until then, I wish you a beautiful pregnancy and birth. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the All About Pregnancy and Birth podcast. Head to my website, drnicolerankins.com, to get even more great information, including free downloadable resources on how to manage pain and labor and warning signs to look out for after birth. You'll also find information on my free online class on how to make a birth plan that works, as well as everything you need to know about my signature online childbirth education class, the Birth Preparation Course. Again, that's drnicolerankins.com, and I will see you next week.